Hey there, Many Constant Worlds is a podcast following the meta disjointed journey through the Dark Tower series by Stephen King.
I'm Taryn, they, them, and I believe in Kyla the Good's New Deal.
And I'm Kat, she, her. We just support Kyla the Good, period.
I do want to clarify that I don't know enough about, was it FDR?
It was FDR.
I know nothing about that or probably politics in general. So, to be clear, I believe in Kyla the Good's New Deal.
Napkins for all.
Yes.
Work for all.
Yeah. Just general. Though I do feel like sometimes you can just pay people to be old. They shouldn't have to. But I also feel like they probably really enjoyed sitting and talking and doing a craft. What? You like crafts, you're a crafty person. You can, how much would you enjoy that, being old and...
I feel like the needlework would probably make my hands very sore and very tired.
Yeah.
And for anybody who's wondering about the rumbling noise, that would be the dogs. They are zooming through the house.
Yeah, there are two. There's Rocket, who is either part Chihuahua, part Manchester Terrier, or Chihuahua and Mini Pin and many other things that make him look more expensive than he was, which was free. And the love of my life.
And then there's the demon that is JJ, who is a chug. That is a Chihuahua crossed with a pug.
But he's a beautiful russet color. It's ridiculous.
He is also ridiculously soft, too.
Yes.
For being made of two dogs that generally are not known for their softness.
I think he's also part Tanuki, but...
And he looks like a capybara.
And he will let you pet him forever and ever. And Rocket won't let you touch him. So...
What we're saying is they're complete opposites, and now they have to live together.
And you can catch their podcast every
background of these ones.
Yeah, pretty much. They're trying to record while we're recording, and it's just...
Yep.
It's frisky time. And considering Naomi, I keep wanting to call her either Natasha or Natalie, neither of which is her name. But considering her favorite dog is named Frisky, that's not weird.
They're also just excited for Frisky to do things.
Yeah, just know this is going to be a dog-heavy episode. Or at least on my end, it's going to be a dog-heavy episode.
All right, so let's get into it. So we finished off The Eyes of the Dragon this time. And
we met the best character, Frisky.
Yeah, we did. We met Frisky. I actually think Frisky may have shown up just at the tail end of the last little section, but we didn't really get to know Frisky.
Yeah, I'm probably jumping way ahead, and I don't care.
I'm not sure. It's all blurring together at this point. When you split up a book, this just happens. And you know what? We finished the book. We're going to talk about the book in its entirety, but let's we'll figure it out. So...
Rocket's throwing his chewy.
Sorry. In this section, we get Dennis sneaking his way back to the inner barony of Delane after we hear about how much he fucking hates turnips. He gets a message to Peter in the Needle, Ben, and dog sled driver Naomi, who is named after King's daughter.
Is it King's daughter or is it his wife?
His wife is Tabitha.
That's why I always think she's named after the wife, because I always think her name is Tabitha or Natasha or Natalie. Anything that isn't Naomi, I think.
Yep. Naomi is named after his daughter, and she comes along to help Ben, and that she is the one with the dog sled and a bunch of huskies, and her favorite, it seems, is named Frisky, and they all make their way back in. So Peter is taking his sweet time to make his escape. He thought about doing it, but then Dennis's message made him decide to wait yet another night. I gotta admit, this book is such a fucking tease with that. It keeps going is he gonna do it now? How about now? Maybe now. Yeah. So either way, Peter's got to be super certain about like when he wants to make this escape, especially because the narrator keeps telling us how thin this rope is and that it's gonna break. He's not shy about it. He's like, this rope is going to break. And the only guys who know it are the Ox dudes, and no one asked them. So Peter's gonna stay one more night and have another dream of Flag, because like everyone is dreaming about Flag right now. I imagine Flag sitting there as a mean girl in high school going, oh my God, why is everyone obsessed with me? Hair flip. And he does narrate the hair flip.
You gotta narrate the hair flip. I feel like if we're talking about mean girls in high school, and which mean girl knows no gender, by the way, if you are that specific kind of person, it's not the same as being the kind of bully that typically fits the male gender category. If you haven't seen the movie Mean Girls, go watch the movie Mean Girls. You'll know.
Hint, I haven't seen the movie Mean Girls.
Which is disgusting and wrong, and another thing that, quite frankly, as soon as we have a Patreon set up, sign up for our Patreon, because I'm going to make her sit and watch Mean Girls, and we can all do it together. And you can help me bully her into doing it. We can mean girl her into watching Mean Girls. Because I have a lot of feelings. Which is a reference you'd understand if you'd seen Mean Girls. But regardless, what is going to come out as we continue to talk is how much I like Naomi as a person. I kind of nothing Ben Stad, but the way that their flirting is written actually kills me. I believe the kids would call it so cringe. I mean, I read this when I was their age. I read this as a teenager, and it was awful. But Frisky is amazing, and is still the best. But in stanza 94, where they're talking about these like dreams and admitting to each other that they've been having these dreams, it almost feels like they're like trying to one up each other about it. So first, I do love that Naomi Frisky's not going to sleep, and she's able to just tell Frisky, you did a good job today, now go to sleep. And the dog's just like, okay, sleep now. Our dogs would never do that. Our dogs...
It's a very unrealistic image of dogs.
You know, I think that's not necessarily true. I think that big dogs you can train that way. I think little dogs, if they understood that that's what you wanted from them, because some dogs speak English, and I believe this wholly in my heart. They speak it or understand entire sentences, and they know this. If they know it's what you want, they're going to do the complete polar opposite because they're assholes. But where she just immediately snaps back, where Ben tries to tell her snow's coming, and she just is like, I can read the clouds as well as you, Ben. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, you're 16, you're 15. Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, I had to kind of skim some of those bits because it was like, I was so embarrassed for them.
Yes, exactly. Cringe.
Painful.
Cringe. I love that this has become a term, because instead of having to say secondhand embarrassment, I can put it back to them. They are being cringe, and I don't want anything to do with it. Ben tries to tell her that he's having dreams, and she's like, well, me too. And then she kind of describes them, but I don't think at any point in the book we're made aware that she had a relationship to Peter in any way. He was just the prince of the area. And it's like, how did you...
Maybe she feels like she knows him because she's heard so many stories from Ben.
Which is why I'm like, why? Ship Peter and Ben at that point. Why is it we have to have this happening? And I'm not saying men can't be friends. Let them be friends. But if she's heard so much about Peter from Ben, let that be what's happening. But she describes it. She describes, all of this about Peter. And I can't tell who's talking when here after she describes it. And so she describes the dream, and it says she looked both ashamed and defiant. And then somebody asks the other, I'm assuming Ben asks her, how many nights have you had it? Because she was the one who was just talking, and then it described her, and then somebody asks somebody else a question. And then So I guess it makes more sense that he's asking her, but it's not, well, there's no reason it couldn't have just been like, been asked her. And we could have, if we had any instruction there, like he could have asked her compassionately. He could have asked, we could have seen some relationship building in this moment, and it would have helped to be less cringe, but there's not. And I don't know who's talking anymore. And then somebody answers 2. And then the first person has to like one up them and be like, well, I've had it 4.
I don't miss being a teenager at all.
No.
I'm so happy I'm no longer a teenager.
Turning 30 is still the best thing that ever happened to me.
Because these days are behind us and we don't have to go back. Unless, of course, we believe in reincarnation, in which case we have to do it again, possibly. But you know what? That's hopefully a ways away.
Yeah. I will say, so as I was going through this copy of this book, because obviously this is not the audiobook. The library took the audiobook back and somebody else was waiting for it, and I don't get to have it right now.
We hope you're enjoying the book.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, yeah, for sure. Enjoy it. I was going to say tweet us, but don't. Twitter's a cesspool. It was before, but it's worse now. Don't tweet us. Message us any other way.
We are on Instagram.
Yeah, Insta. Use Insta. That's better. My copy automatically opens to a lot of pages, which is interesting. I was interested to see what pages I either got really bored and did that really terrible thing where you leave a paper book open to keep your page.
They are a monster.
Yeah. I don't do it with good hardback. I was given as a gift many years ago by somebody very important to me who maybe wanted to start a Dark Tower podcast with me, a first edition Eyes of the Dragon hardbound that is kept in a nice plastic cover, and I would never do that with. This is my reading paperback edition that's very tore up, and it doesn't matter. And honestly, what I need is a loanable out edition. I might have had one before and loaned it to someone who never gave it back, but that's why you have a loaner edition. So I'm a monster, but I'm a monster with the one that's meant to be monstrosified. What's interesting is, it automatically opens to the page that has a, picture
Stephen King
of Peter. Yeah. And I don't know
mentioned
why.
On the last episode.
I don't know if it's because I open it there a lot to show people or what.
Because Peter is just Stephen King.
Because one of the other pages it automatically opens to is a picture of Frisky.
This copy that I bought specifically for this also tends to open to Frisky a lot.
Is it a used copy?
No.
There is something on the opposite page, and I don't know if I should mention it now. I don't know if it's actually a picture of Frisky. There's a very important quote on the other side that has nothing to do with the book.
Okay.
And everything to do with my grandma. So
if you would like to mention it, go for it.
So they are in a lot of snow, and this is where we get to have Frisky's point of view, and she's sniffing stuff, which I fucking adore. I want to be very clear. I usually do not like animal antics. I am not I have no issue with furries. I say live and let live, and if that makes you happy, fucking find your joy. I love it. I'm just not in that community. I'm not don't get the wrong impression. I do think it's very cool how they write from the dog's point of view, how Stephen King did that. But as they're panting and trying to get through it here, Naomi says, "Wish, sled." She panted now. And Ben replies, as soon as I say this, you're going to know why. Wishes, horses, beggars, ride.
I do know why.
My grandma, who meant the whole entire world to me and passed away last year, used to have many different sayings that over the course of our journey might come up. I don't know, might be in other books. I will probably say many of them, and I might say many of them wrong. But one of the ones that I remember the most and that I also repeat all the time is whenever I would say I wished for something, or anybody said it around her, she would reply, well, if wishes were horses, beggars would ride. Which doesn't make any fucking sense in the modern world, and I'm pretty sure it's something that people said to her growing up when she was, like, in the 50s in San Francisco, and it was just, you know, as you do when you're old, and you have things people say to you that barely made sense then, definitely don't make sense now. But that, and, like, seeing that line again, it didn't mean as much at the time, but it hit me now.
Way back when, you know, under the original PlayStation, the first PlayStation, I had a demo disc that had You Don't Know Jack, which is now Jackbox, by the way, to anybody who does not know. And it had, like, it just was a demo disc that had You Don't Know Jack, and it only had a certain set of questions, and one of them was, it was on that quote, if wishes were horses, beggars would ride, and it just, like, doesn't finish the end of the sentence. If wishes were horses, beggars would blank. Because it was more of a trivia game at that time. It wasn't quite what Jackbox is now, where you get to be cheeky and funny. It was more like trivia, like, do you know how to finish this sentence? And I remember it partially because the You Don't Know Jack game was pretty fun to play, but it's only a demo. You only get, like, 5 questions and then it's over. And being a child, I just played it a lot, despite the fact that I knew all the answers. So, that is my association with this.
I'm just glad that it wasn't, like, something she made up, and that it was anywhere else. There was also, what was it? Like one in one hand and
spit in the other.
Yeah, well, it wasn't always spit in the other. So I think usually my grandma would say spit in the other. Sometimes my dad would say shit in the other. See which one fills up first. But I think usually my grandma would go with spit in the other. See which one fills up first. She was a classy lady. She could be a classy lady. When they actually make it to Dennis in the napkin room, of all places. So one, it says that a big yellow spark surely dangerous in that room filled with dry cotton napkins flared in the gloom. I don't think they're, like, disposable napkins. They're made of cloth.
They're made of cloth, yeah.
It is a fire hazard. Like, cloth can go up, but I don't think it would just catch fire. Like, I don't think it's that kind of, like, kindling like that. I think you could probably burn it to keep warm, but you would have to have kindling, essentially, to get it to catch fire, don't you think?
I mean, it might depend on exactly what the climate of Delane is like, because if it was just particularly dry, maybe everything catches really easy.
Yeah.
Which I could believe.
Well, and it would be natural fibers, because it is cotton. So, I guess that does make sense. That was a problem back in the day. Like, people's clothes would catch fire from them standing too close to fireplaces. And I always want to say, like, braziers, or for, like,
braziers.
Braziers
are a different thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's but I think it's pronounced really similarly.
I think they are too.
Or like lanterns or candles or whatever.
Yeah.
That's actually a whole plot point in Little Women, is that Jo consistently burns the back of her dresses because she stands too close to the fire for too long and, like, reads and stuff, and she just she's not ladylike because she's not, like, worried about her dresses, and she doesn't, I guess that's like a scholarly thing, or it was back then, if you just wouldn't notice that you caught fire. Because the guy she eventually married, spoiler alert for the book Little Women by Louisa May Alcott that came out in, like, the late 1800s.
We're definitely past the window.
But like, the guy she eventually marries, like, Dr. Bear or Mr. Bear or whatever, doesn't matter. They bond over the fact that he has the same problem with the tails of his jackets. So I think it was like a scholarly, I'm making, like, a motion with my hand of, like, padding out your...
Now I'm concerned about this couple because they're going to end up burning down their home really easily, and their children, if they have any, because don't they have like a school or something they end up?
Oh,
like...
you meant the couple in Little Women, not the... I thought you meant Ben and Naomi, because they like kiss in the next couple pages, so I don't feel like I'm getting too far to say they end up together. No, I think you should be concerned. They do end up. So again, spoiler alert for Little Women. If you don't want to know what happens, I guess skip the next. Like, don't listen to this part. I don't know, but yeah, Joe inherits a house from their like aunt or great aunt or some. It's confusing. It's not confusing if you've read it, but I don't feel like going into it. But she inherits this giant house, and then to like spite her or something because she never became ladylike and she just wants to teach people, she turns it into a school. In like the Greta Gerwig movie, which by the way is phenomenal and very good, it's a co-ed school. I think based on the name of the sequels, like Joe's Boys and everything, it's like a boys' school, which makes no sense with the story. But I think because it's actually based on her life. Is it Louisa May Alcott? That might be Little House on... No, I think I've got it right.
I think you've got it right.
I always get the author confused with Little House on the Prairie, I'm not going to lie. But it's a mostly autobiographical story. She just kind of... It's the same as Little House on the Prairie. It's a mostly autobiographical story. So I think she just kind of based it on what actually happened to her. If you're listening to this right now and interested in Little Women at all, just watch the Greta Gerwig movie. Don't, if that interests you further, maybe read the book. But if you haven't read it already, I'm not suggesting it. Like, don't go from Stephen King to Little Women. You're not gonna enjoy yourself. I'm not gonna lie.
I want Stephen King to like rewrite Little Women. I would actually read it then.
Oh my god!
Haven't read Little Women.
It's another one that I read when I was young, and so it's just nostalgia, I think.
That's fair.
It's just like deep nostalgia, and I think that I'm sure someone else has made the argument of Joe being like trans or being non-binary, but I think that I could probably make I doubt she's actually meant to be coded that way, but I think that I can make a compelling argument that she's coded that way. So, but anyways, the much more important moment here after the weird like bypass into, oh, these napkins could catch fire at any moment, is by what magic Dennis did not know, only that it had happened, or only that it had somehow happened. His feet caught in the napkins and he stumbled forward, but there was no danger that he might fall because Ben's arms swept him up in a strong embrace. Ben was here and all would be well, Dennis thought, and it was all he could do to keep from bursting into unmanly tears. The tears are even described as unmanly here, and Dennis has to hold them back. So I think the question that we had earlier of like, why did this condemn Peter? Why did this bother people so much is answered right there.
That's fair.
Because it made him look like a little pussy boy.
Well, and like poison is always described as a woman's murder weapon, right?
Yeah.
So if we take the dragon sand as a poison because it was consumed, and it took, what, like a week before Roland actually died from it? He even started feeling better.
I think it was supposed to be 3 days, or maybe it was 3 days, but I think he lasted longer for some reason. Like, it was just weird.
It wasn't like an instantaneous death, and he, like, got better, and then he got a lot worse. So I would say we could count that as a poison.
Oh, yeah.
And then if Peter is crying, he's doing womanly murder.
Yeah. He didn't even have the ball sack to like murder Roland to his face.
Even though that still would require, like, Flag looked him in the face as he's like handing him the drink.
Right.
It's like, not here.
Yeah. No, it's I think that's an interesting point. Though I believe I heard somewhere that's a bullshit statistic.
Yeah, no, I
women
don't think it's
use.
actually real, but I'm just
Yeah,
more
but
mean like the
it is,
saying,
there is an idea, like,
especially
if you haven't
like
looked into it.
in the 80s.
Oh yeah, no, for real. And I don't actually know that it was disproven. I think that I just heard somewhere that it wasn't true. I don't know that I don't even know that that's accurate. And how would we know? Like, if you don't actually get caught for poisoning, because I have a whole theory that female serial killers get caught less because we're not looking for them. That's for a different podcast, folks.
Murder Hour.
Yeah, that is for the podcast that I have not started and probably never will. Murder Hour with me. Murder Hour with me. But yeah, I found that interesting, and I had forgotten about it. But that he has to kind of hold back and be like, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. I will get convicted of a crime if I cry. Other than Naomi and Ben having their big kiss off, their kissy face moment, which is weird to me. Like, something about the timing, like the pacing. I almost feel like this book was meant to be more than one book and then just got into one. But I also still feel like it's just meant to kind of be a fairy tale.
Well, and I think we also have to take into account, like, what was Napkins made up of? How much of this story is just straight from Napkins? And how much was Stephen King going, no, I'm going to flesh it out into, like, a full-on book?
Yeah.
Because if this is a story that he made up for his daughter, is it also a story that he was just sitting there telling her when she was going to bed, and so he didn't really, like, have it all written down at first? And he was just talking. She goes to bed, he runs into his room, and he writes it all down real quick, and then it ends up expanding out. I do feel like the pacing in this is kind of weird, and honestly, like, Ben and Naomi they're almost useless. Like, they serve their purpose, kind of, but their entire, like, side adventure and stuff doesn't feel like it fits with everything else about this book.
Yeah.
Even Dennis fits better than Naomi and Ben as teenagers. Ben makes sense as a kid, as Peter's friend, and even as the one who brings him the dollhouse. But when we get to this, like, the Stodds have run off to hide with the other nobles, and it sounds like that's where he must have met Naomi, or he already kind of knew Naomi or something, and they start coming back in, it feels very out of place.
Yeah. Well, and I also want to know more about the rebels and, like, the rebellion. Like,
You mean Star Wars?
yeah.
It's Star Wars. All of the dreams that everybody's having finally kind of come to a head. And we see, very epically, a tower fall. Which, maybe this isn't a tower-titled book, but I feel like that's really important to note. That we see a tower fall. The steeple of the Church of the Greater Gods falls, and when it impacts, that is what actually wakes Flag up from his own dream that he had been having, and he's not been able to figure out what he's been dreaming about.
So where we get to where Flag is like, he has awoken, the way that line is written makes me think of Dune.
Yeah.
Like, he is awakened now, and all I can hear in my head is just, the sleeper has awoken. Like, I just hear Dune, and I do blame, like, Daddy Worm God Henry Zabrowski a little bit for that. Not gonna lie, because I hear Dune in a lot of things now. But I definitely read, like, because I had no understanding or relationship to Dune any of the other times I've ever read this book. That wasn't there. But now that it is there, I see a little bit of that.
Dune is so much like Lord of the Rings because it was such the template for fantasy. And Dune in particular has a little bit more of that, like, deserty fantasy.
Yeah.
Which it sounds like Delane is fairly close to that more, like, kind of environment of deserts.
I think depending on, like, what point of, because this is made to seem like it's taking place in the same dimension, so to speak, as Roland Deschain is in, like mid-world, I think it is. I always get the worlds, like mid-world, all worlds, end world, like I get them mixed up, which one is which. But because I think it's in mid-world, everything that is just outside of stuff tends to be kind of barren and deserty and just on the edge of, like, once you leave wherever you're at, there's just...
It's just nothing.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting is at the very end of this, how they talk about, like, that they have this big gap on their map.
So, of course, you know, as a magician does, he goes to his crystal ball and he gives several impatient repetitions of the same command because he can't figure out what the crystal ball is trying to tell him.
Which is interesting to me because he's not... Flag is never actually presented as smart at any point. I don't understand. Like, I want to know more about how he's amassed this magical knowledge and why and where it came from.
I do have a theory.
Okay, because I just... He's not ever... Like, the fact that he's demanding, like, show me this, and he's being given the pieces, it feels very, like... And maybe this is just timely, because we very recently watched Snow White, but it feels like her, like, demanding, like, magic mirror, tell me what I want. And the mirror's like, here, this is what you want. And it feels like if she came back and was like, that's not what I want. Why are you showing me this? And instead of taking a moment to contemplate it, he's going, why are you... No, give me what I want.
I told you to do this.
Yeah, he's not.
It's bad.
It's really... It's an interesting moment. He's not trying to read into it at all.
No.
Because it's not beating him over the head with what he wants. He won't.
Yep, pretty much. Because he isn't presented as smart at any point. He couldn't find the rebels. He ends up coming home sick and in his own bed with a fever for a bit prior to this moment when it all kind of, like, bursts.
Yeah.
So... He does repeat a few times, and finally, the crystal ball gets so fed up with him that it just shows him Peter escaping the fucking needle. And so, he grabs his axe from his time as the executioner of Delane under the name Bill Hinch.
Which, the axe, is that not, like, from The Shining?
Jack does use an axe. He does go running through with an axe trying to get the family.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. And it is time to create Randall Flagg's conspiracy board.
All right.
We are beginning Randall Flagg's entry. And I say poster board. It's actually from a drawing pad. It's his page.
It's the biggest drawing pad I've ever seen. You know, we keep calling him Randall Flagg, but I don't think ever once has the name Randall come up. I don't know if we're doing this to see if he has Mary Sue tendencies, but I put it underneath his name anyways because it's hilarious to me.
This is more like, let's piece together. Like, if we're going to try and map out where all the Dark Tower takes us, I think it's important to do things like he used to be Bill Hinch. Because will Bill Hinch come up again somewhere? I'm going to be watching for that shit now. The axe is a great thing to keep an eye out for.
Axe wielding.
Obviously, we know that he's a magician, so he has some kind of magic, though really... Has he really displayed magic?
Yes. So we have, as far as the magic that he's done, he did the finger thing with the light to make the bats
That's right.
go.
Like, that's a good point. He has displayed magic, so...
I do think it's interesting that he did magic with his fingy. That'll be interesting, I think, for The Shining, that he does.
Yeah?
What's the name of the...
Tony.
Tony, no, okay. Bill feels like such a familiar name. And I'm trying to...
Bill, I think, isn't that the main character in It? The main little boy?
Oh, maybe. I only remember the fingy light because they have a picture of it in the book. There's an illustration of him doing, like... He is not particularly smart, and I feel like that, or not portrayed as particularly smart. though I do feel like he thinks he is, and that feels important. And it feels important because of Roland Deschain.
Yeah.
And also, Roland Deschain knows he is not the brightest person and will end up trying to, like, his quartet, he tries to make sure he has smart people, or like, he makes sure he has a smart person in it because he knows that's something that he fails on. So that's why I keep bringing that up.
I think, though, that we need to frame it the right way, because he's also not stupid. He's just not...
He's wily.
He's wily, he's clever. If he has to think about it too long, it's too long. He won't take the... He's impatient.
Yes.
He's very impatient. And yet he still waits like hundreds of years, but then he blows it. He blows it by getting impatient in a moment.
He's inconsistent.
And maybe overconfident, because he does not expect all of the things that are about to come down on his head. He does not expect that anybody saw him with Roland, which we all are aware of the fact that Thomas saw him. He is surprised to see Peter escaping, especially after so many years. So he just...
That's where that thinks he's smarter than he is comes in.
Yeah.
It feels, that whole true crime background coming back in, because a lot of, like, serial killers feel this way. Like, I'll say actually a lot of criminals, when they have been interviewed, or when you look at their interviews and stuff, they talk, like, the way that they talk, they think they're the smartest person in the room always, and they very rarely are. Very often they are of average or below average intelligence, but they think they're the smartest person in the room, and that's the shit that gets them caught. The way that the book talks about, like, evil very often, like, does shit that screws themselves over. It's kind of the same concept, where because he's overconfident, and because he thinks, well, I've got it all figured out and I'm 10 steps ahead of everybody else, but in reality everybody else is just scared of him but knows exactly what he's doing all the time. The second that they decide that they're less scared of him than they are done with his shit, he's done. And I feel like that's important. And I feel like that's an important, like, distinction, and going to be important to the character. Because it's definitely what takes him down in this book. He thinks he's so far ahead of everybody else that they get the drop on him. And particularly Thomas ends up getting the drop on him because he just thinks, you're nothing. Like, I'm so many steps ahead of everybody that I have nothing to worry about. And I think that's why I keep bringing that particular point up. I left, like, a little question mark after the then he actually is part, because we haven't encountered enough of him to see if he gets more, like, to see enough intelligence, I guess.
Yeah.
But he absolutely thinks he's smarter than everybody else.
Yes. All right. So I think that is probably all for now.
Okay.
'Cause we're going to add to it. This is a building thing. It's the same as, like, any other page we're going to make.
Yeah.
So.
Eventually it'll be the Charlie Day meme.
Someday. Now, Randall Flagg, awake. I'm assuming his fever broken enough that, or it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He's fine.
Yeah.
Axe in hand, goes running for the needle.
Yeah, I kind of hope he doesn't feel good, quite frankly.
maybe that's why shit doesn't go his way.
Yeah. Actually, I did mark that in the book. I think that's an important point, because Peter got that feeling like, wait one more day. Like, everybody keeps getting these feelings of, like, okay, wait for a minute. Now Flagg is sick and weaker. So I actually legitimately do think...
But he was sick before. He was probably sicker the day before.
Maybe. Possibly.
Because he came back from searching for the rebels ill.
Yeah.
And he'd been, like, asleep for a couple of days because he wasn't feeling well.
Yeah, maybe. But also, like, everything had to line up exactly perfectly for everything to work out perfectly. Ka is a fucking bitch. It always works out the way it needs to work out.
And that does mean it is finally time. It's finally fucking time. All of our waiting is paying off, and Peter is finally gonna try and make his escape.
It's napkin time, motherfuckers.
So, at all of this point, we do have Flag running towards the needle, running up the needle, up all of the stairs.
So he couldn't have been that sick.
No, I think he was just so empowered by rage that his 450-year-old plan was about to get fucked.
I've done things out of spite. I don't know about everybody else. I spite clean. I rage clean sometimes if I get mad enough. I've absolutely haven't you done shit just fueled by rage before? And then once it was over, you're like, oh my god, I broke my body doing that.
Yeah. That's life working in a warehouse. You're just full of rage, and then at the end of the day, you're broken.
Nobody here works in a warehouse anymore.
Nope.
And if you do work in a warehouse, you
should unionize.
Yes, unionize. You have our utmost sympathy and support, and you're a fucking hero.
Yep.
And also, I'm so sorry. Unionize. If you get the chance to unionize, do it. Don't listen to your boss when they're like, you don't need a union, you could just talk to us. No, they're full of shit. Unionize. And if they're trying to fucking bust, union bust, don't tweet us. Twitter sucks. Instagram us. I'll go down there. I don't fucking work for them. I'll yell at them. I don't give a shit. I'm very good at yelling at people.
We're ready to Karen on your behalf.
Yes. My name rhymes with Karen. I can be the best Karen. I'm very bad at Karening for myself, but I'm really good at Karening for other people. So
mom friend override.
Yes. Oh my god, yes. I will fucking, they think they can union bust. I will union bust. You don't even know. So you might have to fly me out there. I'm very poor, but that's not the point.
We will fight your fight.
Yes.
We support that you be treated well, because we've both worked in warehouses, even though we don't anymore.
Yeah.
And we have lived that life. That life is fucking hard as shit.
It's the worst.
And
well, probably not.
Get some Voltaren gel for your back. Get some Epsom salt for your feet. Get some O'Keeffe's for your hands.
Yes.
And take care of yourself.
Self-care is very important. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And you are a fucking god or goddess. Because we wouldn't have anything in our house without people working in warehouses. That's why I said you're a fucking hero.
Yes, as you were mentioning, in The Shining, Jack uses an axe. Much as Randall Flagg is flying about with one. It does sound like he's got a giant one. His seems a lot more badass than Jack's,
Yeah, it does say it's a battle axe.
Yeah, he's got a badass axe that he's gonna go. I mean, if you're an executioner, I imagine you really want a quality axe to take off their heads.
Yeah, it does say also executioner's axe. I've never really thought about it, but holy shit. Really imagine you're trapped at the top of a tower and some fucking maniac is coming with an executioner's axe. Where you have nowhere to go.
And he's running with this.
Upstairs. That alone is maniacal.
Yeah.
Running upstairs holding a heavy object. Honestly, respect to Flag. That's intense.
Yeah, no, this is no easy. He clearly did not skip leg day.
I was about to say the exact same thing. I like that it's counting down steps as well. How many he's gone and how many he's left to go. It does make me wonder if he's counting in his head. okay, I've made it 70. I only have so many left to go. But quite frankly, I think he's fueled by evil and mania and whatever it was that got into Jack in The Shining, like, which makes me wonder if it was Flag that got into Jack in The Shining.
That's a solid possibility.
But we're not to The Shining.
We're going to
yet.
get to The Shining eventually. There's a lot of interesting things here that have made me think of The Shining, which, again, The Shining is the first Stephen King book I ever read.
And I haven't read it yet.
Because I had wanted horror books, and my mom brought me home a copy of The Shining one day. And I think she gave me that and a copy of Cujo. I never read Cujo, though, but I have it. I'm assuming, I'm of the impression there's some connection there, too. Either way, I'm going to read Cujo.
Did she give you Cujo because you had a cat named Cujo?
No, she gave me Cujo, I think, because it was just the other book she could find.
Her mother had a cat named Cujo that earned the name Cujo.
Yeah.
Which I've only heard stories about. I never got to meet Cujo.
Yeah, Cujo was a black cat that the only person whose ankles it did not immediately attack were my mom's. Everybody else, you had to worry about the stupid cat coming for you. And then, very sadly, ironic, coincidental, it did end up getting rabies. So don't name, like, there's power in names, guys. Like, legitimately.
Yeah,
if you, like, name your dog or something after, like, a god like Thor or Loki, you are getting what you asked for. There are power in names.
Yes, there's power in names. One of our dog's names is JJ. Well, that's a long story. And the other dog's name is Rocket. And that name fits.
Yeah.
I don't really know what JJ could possibly be other than...
His name is just JJ, by the way, like letter J. It's not short for anything, though we do call him JJ Jameson sometimes.
I was going to say J. Jonah Jameson. That made Rocket's head pop. Your name's not that.
But
you're not J. Jonah Jameson, little buddy.
So just keep that in mind, because I don't know what fucking turn of the planet happened that Cujo the cat experienced a similar fate to Cujo the dog. At least my understanding, because again, I didn't read the book. I don't know yet. But rabies happened, and unfortunately, we did have to have the cat put down because that was no way to live.
So you want to name your animals something like, I don't know, self-care.
Self-care.
I was trying to remember the name of the guy who did the really chill Somewhere Over the Rainbow cover.
Oh my gosh.
I know. It's, right?
I can't remember it, but that song's amazing. His cover's amazing.
It's making me really mad because the name that keeps coming to mind is definitely not his name. It's the name of a serial killer, and that's making me really angry because those are two very different things.
Very different. Anywho,
yeah,
anyways.
Sorry.
Meanwhile, base of the needle, we have Dennis, Ben, Naomi, and Frisky bringing out napkins.
Frisky is such a good dog.
Frisky is a very good dog. I think they hitched cart up to Frisky and then they loaded it up, brought it over for Peter to land on, because his rope's gonna break.
We've been told this.
It's very explicit that this rope will break. And, it does.
I do want to point out, I feel like also they had to wait for this night because of the snow. And that gets brought up because the snow's quite deep. So the idea is, well, there's much snow and then the napkins, right?
Yeah.
That's not how snow works.
No.
I will give that snow means that the ground is closer to where Peter needs to be. If there's 10 feet of snow, now he's 10 feet closer to the ground. Snow is not soft. It's not going to cushion your fall, especially if it's as cold as they're saying it is. Snow, we live someplace that only gets so much snow, but if you've ever heard of the Donner Party, then you know that we live someplace that can be very dangerous with snow. And if you live any place that is much more snow than we get here, it's worse.
It's so much worse.
You
mean Maine? The snow of Maine?
I still really want to go to Maine, and nobody has sent me free Maine tickets or a free Maine, like, bed and breakfast. And honestly, I don't think I'd trust it, because that's how you get itted, is people being like, come to fucking Derry and just hang out here. And that's how you get sacrificed to, like, a demon in Maine. But honestly, I think I'd still do it. I really want to see Maine. But yeah, snow is not, like, even when it's powdery, it's not actually soft. I'm positive there has to be a Mythbusters about this. It's not going to be helpful. It's the same, like, if you fall from a high height onto water, it's the surface tension is going to hurt you. The napkins.
It's a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale. That's why this is about to work. But you know what we see more than anything else here? We see a person falling from a tower. And it's, like, stormy out.
Is that like the tarot card, the tower?
Yeah.
Interesting.
The tower is two people falling from a tower. And flag's up there.
Interesting.
But yes, let me pull the tower card, and we can more thoroughly describe the imagery of the tower.
Yeah. No, tell me all about it, because I don't remember.
Yeah, traditionally in the Rider-Waite, at least, the tower depicts two people falling from a tower with a big streak of lightning behind it. And again, the Church of the Greater Gods got knocked down, and I think it was because of a storm, because of lightning.
Yeah, it's a huge. The whole thing is that it's a very stormy night.
Yeah, it's very interesting that this is the sequence to which we see things in this moment. All right, so yes, we see a crown at the top, and I'll show this to you in a moment. A strike of lightning. The tower is on fire, and two people are falling from the tower. I believe it's supposed to be a man and a woman, but I'm not 100% sure if that's true. Frankly, both of the people on here look fairly androgynous to me, but there are probably some, like, historical clues as far as, like, their clothing that may actually give Taryn more of an idea as to which is which, if that's the situation. One of them is still wearing their crown, and the other one, I'm assuming, might be the crown that's, like, flying up above.
Give me 1 second, because there is a picture in the book of Peter falling. And so we will trade. I will take a look at the tower card, and then you can take a look at the picture in the book.
All right, and in the book, we have a little, like, cut of flag with his axe at the top, but we do see the tower. We see the rope snapping and Peter falling with Delane in the background. It's pretty cloudy back there, but the moon is out. This does not look quite as stormy as the tower card, but it also is not a clear, beautiful night.
That is interesting, especially because the way that Peter is falling looks a lot like
that one.
Like that on the classic.
Yeah.
Because that is a classic Rider-Waite.
Yes.
Just like a typical.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see how it looks on other decks, I think. And I do think it's interesting because this picture in the book specifically has a cutout at the top to show flag. Mm-hmm. So there are two people in this card. So I know in tarot, like, you have the Fool, and you have, like, in the major arcana, you have the Fool, and then you have
the Magician?
Yeah, I was gonna say the Magician, but there's other people, there's other characters, so to speak, as well. But those are kind of the two. The Fool is trying to become the Magician, is kind of what... Or is that incorrect?
I have never taken it that way, but... You could. I think that it just depends on how in tune with, like, the deck you are.
Yeah.
Because, and how you're feeling about it. Because there is a level of tarot that's very intuitive.
I guess that's how I see or that's how I've always understood the, like, wheel and the Fool's journey to be. You start as the Fool, and you go on this journey, because the Magician has all of the...
higher knowledge.
Exactly. You have all the higher knowledge. You are in complete control. You have everything figured out, I guess. And so the Fool is trying to become that person, and the Empress and the the female versions.
The Empress and the High Priestess.
Thank you, the High Priestess. They're just the female versions of
The Magician and the Emperor. Yeah.
Exactly. You're just trying to become those things, and you have to go through the whole wheel of everything, and that's why you hit like death and everything, and then you are reborn again as the Fool, and you go through the circle again and again, because that's just life. That's just the whole cycle. So when you see the two falling out of the tower, it's just the two. That's why one has a crown and one just kind of looks like the Fool, because he's got like the traveling cloak. That's what that looks like to me anyways, because the crown could be the Emperor or it could be the Magician, right?
I know that the magician has a crown, but
I know the Magician is usually the infinity symbol above his head.
Yeah, it's the infinity symbol above his head, and like at least in this, he's got some sort of band, but he doesn't quite wear a crown, but he does have like all of the
and he's got like the cloak. So it could actually be that it's the Emperor and the Magician are falling from the tower, because he's got the red cloak falling. Yeah. So if you look at it that way, then that it's the Emperor and the Magician falling out of the tower. Peter leaving the tower takes down Thomas and Flag, like in that moment, right? Who are literally the king and the magician.
Yeah.
Because that's what those two people look like to me. I think it is interesting that he's got the crown and then the other one has the red cloak.
Yeah.
I feel like that's on purpose. And then to have the picture in here of Peter falling, and it just does look fairly similar. And it's the moment that the rope snaps, but the moment that he like gets out of the tower, everything changes.
Well, and that's the interesting thing, because the tower represents sudden change or upheaval. Most of the cards in the tarot imply gradual change, but the tower is a symbol of chaos and can sometimes indicate catastrophic change, which is really like what we're about to just, from this point, this book just goes so freaking fast.
Yeah.
For how slow other parts were, the next little section from this point on goes so freaking fast. There's no breaks.
Well, and what's interesting too is that lightning strikes this other tower and takes it down. So exactly what happens in this card. Mm-hmm. And then catastrophic, chaotic change occurs throughout the book. What's also interesting with that card will be in the actual Dark Tower series.
Yeah.
Because you have the Crimson King and Flag, the man in black, Flag the Magician. And I still think, looking at that card, the way that it's drawn, it looks like the Emperor and the Magician, like the High Magician or whatever. I don't know if you see that as much in that card.
I can see it. I can kind of see it looking at them, especially because like they have the weird little crown at the top. It almost looks a little bit to me like the Emperor and the Empress, but it's not actually how they look in this deck.
Oh, okay.
But that's why I say like tarot has a level of like intuition, because I've also heard people say that the people falling out are the lovers, but they don't look anything like the lovers to me.
Yeah.
So I think that you have to take this and keep in mind that you're going to see whatever's relevant to what you're applying. You know, if I asked a question about like me and someone at work getting along and I got this card,
yeah,
it's going to be a different meaning to me than even that.
Yeah.
So I think that I can absolutely see where you're coming from with it, because in application to this, that checks out.
For sure. Well, and I think it is also interesting that you have a crowned figure, the figure with the cloak, and then the tower itself is crowned.
Yeah.
Like, it's interesting.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
And I feel like really does show how much more went into this, especially because tarot does become relevant in the Dark Tower. And we already talked a little bit about the fact that we were going to use it. There's a reason we pull a card every episode.
Yes.
And those cards have been ridiculously relevant, but maybe we're also just seeing that because, again, this is up to interpretation to some extent of what you're going to take from it. We have a person falling from a tower. And somehow, because of fairy tale magic, the napkins do, in fact, break the fall. And I think, like, Flag comes up and is, like, looking down at him, like, what the fuck?
Oh, and I did forget, only because I was looking at a picture later where Peter has, like, a scraggly beard. Naomi and Ben aren't teenagers anymore. They'd be, like, 21-ish, which makes their behavior even less excusable. But, sorry.
Fair.
So,
valid.
They were, like, 16 or 17 when Peter went into the tower. It's been 5 years, I believe.
It has. The group kind of reconvenes. Crazy ass Flag is up there. And they go running to try and get into King Roland's old room because they want to get to his bow. Like, that is the goal here. And there was one thing that I had stood out to me, but I gotta try and figure out where I wrote down the spot that I need to go to.
Was it that Peter didn't break a single bone or even, like, skin a knee or anything?
That is the power of plot armor. It is a Gary Stew's greatest, like,
he didn't
power.
even, like, need a, like, I just, he's just ready to go.
Oh yeah,
He didn't even have to eat a turnip.
No turnips for Peter, only for Dennis. Dennis just loves turnips.
Poor Dennis. I don't think I've ever eaten a turnip, to be quite honest.
So I ate one very recently, and you know what? It was damn good, but it was fancy food. So the bunch is heading in to try and get to King Roland's chambers. No, Peter is perfectly fine. He is practically perfect in every way still. 100% intact.
Fucking Gary Lou. Carrie Lou.
They go running inside, but it doesn't matter because we're gonna, like, sidestep and talk about Thomas, who's having a really rough night.
It's about time.
Not
that he had a rough night, it's just about time we talked about Thomas.
Yeah, I think most of Thomas's nights are rough. He's really feeling that grief for his father and the predicament he is in, because he's not king material. He never expected to be king, but here he is. And so he ends up going to his dad's chambers as well. And he's taken down the bow. He's put on his dad's old robe. And he just kind of sits down and lets himself grieve.
That's probably best. Sorry that you're in the Dead Dad Club.
Yeah.
You're in good company. And also, it sucks.
And just, grief is natural, and no two people grieve the same way. Don't let anybody tell you you're grieving wrong, as long as you're not hurting anybody. If your grief is making you hurt people, that you need to stop.
That includes yourself.
Yes.
And I would say that Thomas's way of grieving with alcoholism is not such a great way. No. And I would urge him to reach out for therapy. Yeah. And BetterHelp, please sponsor us, because I believe in you.
Yes. Like, we you know what? BetterHelp in general, we hear is a great service.
Yeah, for real. Like, we're not sponsored by them yet. I still think that you should reach out if you need
Absolutely.
help. There's resources in your community. Go get them. Get at it. Everybody needs therapy. Therapist needs therapy. If you think you don't need therapy, you need it more than anybody else.
And there's no shame in that. You know what? It's nice sometimes just to have someone who will listen.
Yeah.
Either way, Thomas is grieving. And this is where everybody comes together at the showdown. So Flag always woke from his dreams holding his hand over his left eye. And he's about to find out why.
Okay, you remember Crimson Peak?
I do, yes. Great movie.
Yeah, Crimson Peak is so... Like, people sleep on Crimson Peak so hard. It's such a good movie.
It's such a good movie.
And you see Tom Hiddleston's butt. Just want to put that out there. And if you watch it for no other reason, watch it for that. But I can give you a million other and probably better reasons to watch Crimson Peak. But if you will watch it for no other reason, watch it for that reason. But, so, do you know why I'm bringing up Crimson Peak right now with the left eye thing?
No, I don't remember.
Okay, so spoilers for Crimson Peak. If this is legitimately probably spoilers. It's kind of an old movie, but not super old. Do you remember at the end when he becomes a ghost?
Oh, yeah.
And, like,
Oh.
and his eye, and, like, the way his eye is, like, ghosty. When it starts talking about him and, like, the left eye thing, like, that's what I'm picturing.
Yeah.
For some reason, is like, he just wakes up and, like, he has ghosty left eye. And he has to stop it from doing that for some reason. It does not describe that way at all.
So everybody is coming together here. We end up with Peter, Ben, and Naomi, I believe, just and Dennis. I forgot about Dennis. Busting in, and the bow is not there. Flag comes in, and he thinks he sees a ghost because Thomas, as we've talked about, looks like his dad. Yeah. And right now, especially, he's got his dad's bow. He's got on his robe, and Randall thinks he sees Roland, and is kind of like, he is slowed by that. And he ends up, there's smack talk. Smack talk is happening.
Yeah.
And Thomas does what Thomas needs to do in this moment. Fires off an arrow with insane accuracy right into Flag's left eye.
Thomas has been scared by Flag with Flag's, like, glamour magic enough times that maybe he's feeding a little bit of that back to him. But I think the question of, like, does Thomas shine? Yeah, I think that gets answered, like, right now.
I feel pretty strongly that Thomas for sure shines.
Yeah.
I think Roland had a little bit of a shine. At least he at least had a mild one. Like, if we talk in terms of like The Shining itself and the sequel, Doctor Sleep, Mr. Halloran, I think, is the one who helps young Danny. He had a fairly mild shine. Like, he had it, and he would talk about, him and his grandmother had whole conversations. Danny very clearly had it much stronger, which is why the hotel wanted to feed on him so badly. Spoiler, I guess. And then we get to Abra, who is so strong, she is able to bring people to her.
Yeah.
And kind of, she's got this ridiculous shine. And I do think Thomas is probably closer to the Abra edge of it. Or at least the Danny to Abra versus the Halloran to Danny scale.
Yeah.
And so we do our showdown with Flag, and I think he just kind of, it ends very abruptly, frankly, the book does.
Yeah.
But there was one thing that I found freaking fascinating that he says to them in this showdown with them.
It wasn't his battle axe with spiky testicles at the end?
No. It was not his battle axe with testicles.
Spiky testicles?
Spiky testicles. I think it's just before he realizes that Thomas is there. Before Flag realizes Thomas is there, and he's just looking at Peter. And he says to him, "You may think your God was kind, but I tell you, my own gods were saving you from me. Pray to your God now that your heart should burst apart in your chest. Fall on your knees and pray for that, because I tell you that my death will be much worse than any you can imagine." Everything about this quote I am living for.
Yeah.
First of all, Flag has a god. And this is where my theory about Flag comes in, which is that he's a warlock.
Yeah.
And he has a patron, and that is his god. But a lot of times with these fairy tales and things like that, the bad guy is typically not attributed to a god.
Yeah.
And so I really enjoyed that. I really want to know more about his god. And so my question to you is, do I ever get to learn more about his god?
I know who I think could be his god. I think there's a couple things that could be happening in that scene. I think that he would know that if he's in a religious enough place that they had like a church and everything and they have a god and whatever, that's a really scary thing to say. And he's trying, like, he wants to instill fear right then. Because I don't know that I've ever taken that quote very seriously. The serious part of that is, I'm going to torture the ever-loving shit out of you because I'm fucking furious. And part of that torture comes from, you find out at the beginning of the book that people are terrified of Flag, and they whisper about him like being a demon and being really awful. Things that are untrue about him, but that he lets get whispered because that shit has power, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know for sure that he actually has a god and that he's not just playing into that idea. If Flag has a god and his god is not just chaos in general, my guess is it's the Crimson King. The Crimson King is trapped in the Dark Tower. He's in a room in the Dark Tower, like in a balcony of it, which doesn't really feel like a spoiler. Like, that's just part of the mythos of the Dark Tower. The Crimson King is in one of the, like, on one of the levels of the Dark Tower in a balcony. I think that's part of why Flag wants to bring it down, but he also just wants to reduce everything to chaos. The way that he wants to just fuck up Delane, he wants to do that to all of reality by tearing down the beams that hold up the Dark Tower and tearing down the Dark Tower.
All I can think is a reverse Big Bang.
Yeah, actually.
That's all I can think.
Yeah. That's actually a really good, like, I know you're kind of making kind of a joke, but you're not like wholly wrong. If we're talking like D&D alignments, Flags is just chaotic evil. Like, he just, like, I wouldn't even say chaotic, like, he presents himself as evil, but in reality, I would say probably just chaotic neutral. He just wants chaos. It's not always clear why, but that's because I haven't read everything and I'm not great at not skipping parts to get back to the parts that I give a shit about, because in reality, Roland Deschain is going to the Dark Tower because it calls to him, and that is his job and his quest. He's like in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. His quest is the Grail. His quest is the tower. It kind of has to do with the Man in Black, but even if the Man in Black wasn't there, Roland would still be going to the tower. He is just obsessed with it. It is just everything. And the more that we get into the books, the more that you will see that it doesn't have that much to do with thwarting evil or thwarting anything else. He builds these quartets around him of people who are like, oh, sweet, like we're saving all of reality and we're doing something really important. And then those people become disillusioned with Roland because they realize that they can put all of this evil down over and over and over again, and he's still walking, he's still going, because he cannot stop. He'll walk until his feet are literally bloody stumps, and there's nothing that he can do. He's still going to keep going to the tower. So it's similar. They're both locked in this thing of, for some reason, Flag has to tear it down, and for some reason, Roland has to go there and essentially save it. And it doesn't necessarily have to make sense.
Look, when your call to adventure gives you a ring, you gotta answer.
Yeah.
You just have to answer it. You don't ask questions.
Yeah.
You grab your shit and you go.
But I think that's why I've always liked it. Because it's very trippy.
Yeah.
And when you get to the end of book 7, you're like, oh, why? What the actual fuck? Because it just... So, in reality, his god is... I do think Flag has a patron, but in reality, I don't know that it matters.
And it may not. So much about that just felt very interesting.
Yeah.
Especially because he's talking about his own death. It's going to be much worse than any of you can imagine.
I think he meant, like, the death that I'm going to serve you. Like, my death. My version of death. Like, the death that I hand you. My death, rather than the death that you would have got from falling from this tower, will be worse. I think that's what he meant when he said my death.
And that's possible, because, like, it's, like, italicized amongst the words. Like, it's just a very...
Yeah.
very grabbing moment.
No, I think it's possible. I won't lie. I feel like the end of this book is very rushed.
Yes.
And
oh my god, yes.
I think that's why you get whole dialogues where you don't know who's talking to who and shit. Because I think it was like, I'm tired of writing this and I want it to be done now. Because I think it was never meant to be a full novel.
Yeah.
And because it was Stephen King and he was a bestseller by then, he could kind of get away with who's talking to who. I can't tell. So I don't think that's necessarily an artistic thing right there. I think it's literally just like no hate on Stephen King. Obviously we stand, but like we can stand realistically. This book is not the strongest book that he's ever written.
It's not. But I mean, it's great, but it's not his best work. It's not the most well executed book I've ever read. That's for sure. But
no.
It is. The ending is so rushed because, like, that quote on my copy of this book is on page 361, and the book ends on 372.
Yeah.
It's literally 11 pages before the end of this book.
Yeah.
And basically, this is before Thomas even shoots him in the eye, and then Peter, what Peter says to Flag also makes me kind of cringe. The whole... Get you gone from here. Leave Delane behind. Now and forever, you are cast out. Get you gone.
Yeah. Yeah, nobody has been talking with that kind of cadence at any point. But in Peter's small defense, he's mostly not spoken to another human being for 5 years. So it's only so much his fault.
That's fair. There's the shot of Flag and his spiky bald axe a few pages later.
Yeah. That picture for me is on 373 and this book ends on 380. So, yeah. But I think the line that kills me the most is Ghost, Flag shrieked. Ghost or demon from hell, I care not. I killed you once. I can kill you again.
Okay, can you do the Xena thing?
No,
okay.
I cannot. The tongue thing.
I can't do it either.
The like thing. No, I can't. As I just showed you, I
Lucy
cannot.
Lawless, we need you to come do the Xena thing for us,
or anybody else who can do it.
But we'd love to meet Lucy Lawless. Just saying.
Yeah, I don't know if we've made this clear enough that we've mostly started a podcast to get free things and meet people we want to meet. But at least we're upfront about the fact that that's what we're trying to accomplish. Moving forward a little bit to after Flag's death then, where Thomas...
Well, ice shooty.
Yeah, that's fair.
Flag flees. He runs away.
Yeah, that's fair.
He runs away like a bitch.
Yeah.
He does not stand in fights.
No. He gets shot in the left eye. It's like, fuck this.
Yeah.
Fuck Delane.
Yeah. Faux hammer, I believe, is the arrow or the bow's name, and it's enough for Flag to go, I'm out.
I hope it wasn't. I don't like the idea that... Because, okay, the dragons are pretty badass. Flag... is just a guy. They didn't have to use a special... It doesn't matter. When Thomas is, being very... I'm sorrier than you'll ever know. You'll kill me now, I guess, and I deserve to be killed. Yes, I know I do. I don't think I'm using this right, but in my head, I kept inserting, ooh, and I'm positive I'm not using that correctly, and I don't care. It just felt that way to me. It's very you'll kill me now. Ooh. Because he's just very, dude, it's not about you. Peter was literally in a tower for 5 fucking years, and you could have stepped forward at any point. You're literally the king. You were literally the king. You could have at any point been you know what? I don't want him in prison in the tower, though. I want him on, house arrest in my house, because I'm the king, and we've made it very clear that this is an absolute monarchy, and that's where I want my brother to be. And people might have side-eyed you and been oh, so you helped him kill your dad. Like, it would have been shitty, but you had that ability. And even if you didn't do it when you were like 12, you're like 17 now. And you could have done that. And then he starts crying. So we have another crying child man. But it's okay. This time it's okay. This is an okay crying. And because Peter is okay with it when men cry.
Well, and also Thomas is nothing.
Yeah.
He literally holds no value to pretty much anybody in this story.
Yeah.
That I think it's more like no one cares that Dennis is crying. They're not not Dennis, but Thomas is crying.
Yeah.
They're looking at it as like nothing over there is doing nothing.
Yeah. Well, but Peter cares because Peter is Peter.
And he's kind to everybody.
Of course. And then we get back to the rushed ending, which is interesting. Like the way that it's described, because we're back to, I still feel like this is somebody telling someone a bedtime story. Mm-hmm. It's very The Hobbit in that way to me.
Yeah.
To the point where it's like, did they all live happily ever after? No, because no one ever does.
Right.
They had times where they were ashamed of themselves, knowing they hadn't done their best. Times when they knew they had stood where their God had meant them to stand. All I'm trying to say is that they lived as well as they could, each and every one of them. Some lived longer than others, but all lived well and bravely, and I love them all and am not ashamed of my love. Well, who the fuck are you? Like, I do think it's interesting that Peter had to go back to jail so the new Judge General could, like, declare the charges dropped. Well, the charges overturned.
Which in the ending, Flag runs away and Thomas and Dennis decide to go after him.
And then Peter tries to get Thomas to stay with him.
Yeah. And you know what I thought was interesting was when Peter is talking to Thomas after that, he tells him, you were controlled by a powerful creature who terrified you. So we're dehumanizing Flag at this point. We are making him a creature, which I like. Because of like some of the shit where I'm kind of starting to mentally go with this. Describing Flag as a creature helps fuel my further theories, so I'm here for this business.
Yeah. No, for sure. I agree with you. The idea that he's not, but he's lived for so long that I think that's part of that. Mm-hmm. I wonder, like, I just have to wonder then if Flag made his way to Derrymane. Because he is a creature. I'm interested to know.
And Highway 50.
Yeah.
Because of Desperation.
Yeah. I don't know anything about Desperation, but I've seen the new It movies because I love Bill Hader so much that I suffered through my fear of scary movies. And I'm not afraid of scary movies anymore. I wanted to share that with everybody. So as far as does he shine? Well, yeah, for sure. Thomas shines, and I think at this point he knows it too, because he says he's out there somewhere in this world or in some other. He's out there. I know it. I feel his poison in the wind, and I would go into the south first, for I sense him there. And then Dennis goes with like a Samwise Gamgee type.
And I feel like we need to look at the picture.
Oh,
because
yeah.
Peter has a little tear.
Yeah, Peter's allowed to cry again because now he's the king. Ben, even the back of his head is drawn exactly like he was drawn as a child in the exact same clothes. And Naomi has short hair, which I don't know. I don't know. I'm tired. Like, I'm just exhausted at this point. This fucking book has made me tired. Frisky apparently enjoys wine.
We do not recommend giving your dogs wine. This is incredibly dangerous. Please never give your dog wine.
Oh, Thomas is almost crying again right at the end. He's on the verge of tears, taking back Dennis. And then they leave at night under the cover of darkness. Peter is weeping as if his heart would break when they leave, and then he thinks I'll never see him again. And then, oh, well, perhaps he did and perhaps he didn't. But I rather think he did, you know. All I can tell you is that Ben and Naomi were eventually married, and that Thomas and Dennis had many adventures and did see Flag again. But we get told that they see Flag again, but not that whether or not that turned out well for them. I can tell you that it probably didn't, because Flag is still around, and we don't find out anything about Peter's reign, or if Peter ever got married, or I don't know what happened to Frisky. Like,
the narrator does tell us, though, the hour is late, and all of that is another tale for another day.
Yeah, but we don't ever get that.
No, we don't. Just like the one guy. He never tells me about the other dude.
No.
But we finished The Eyes of the Dragon.
We did it.
Who doesn't love an origin story?
I am of the impression that there is, I think it's Little Sisters of Illyria, but I'm not sure. I would have to look it up again, because I've looked it up a couple times. But there is, like, Thomas and Dennis do show up again somewhere.
That's what I've heard.
But I don't think you ever hear anything else about anybody else. And I don't know in what fashion Thomas and Dennis show up. And if it's just a mention of Thomas and Dennis, I'm not here for it. You made it sound like you were going to tell me everything about them. This is rude. Give me, in the words of Britney Spears, gimme more. Give me more. Gimme more. But not like this. Gimme good more. Gimme more good. I wouldn't demand that if I didn't know that he could do good more. And I say this is still probably my favorite book, but I just love the story. I like these kinds of stories, but having to read it and be critical in any way, shape, or form, it falls apart.
That's fair. I can say it is a fun book, and I think being able to skip over some parts, keep it being a fun book. But when you start to really break it down, you do see some of the spots that's just this is not you at your best, Stephen King. I've seen you at your best, and this ain't it.
Yeah.
But, final thoughts as we have now wrapped up The Eyes of the Dragon. Would you like to go first? I mean, you've read it 1,000 times, but...
No, I think you go first, because I
have read it 1,000 times.
And might be long, and also I want to...
Okay. It's a good book. I think that it is probably a stronger book in terms of, setting up for things.
Yeah.
I really am, on about these Force ghosts. The Shining is just the Force, because it's mind powers. It is Force ghosts. It is the Force. Yeah. And since this was done in the 80s, Star Wars was a thing. So I definitely am just kind of watching for that going forward. I am going to keep an eye out for the God thing, especially because some parts of this really did make me think of Desperation. And I haven't read that in ages, probably a solid decade. But I know that I've heard theories, and that's the other thing here, is that this is not stuff I know for sure because I haven't read all these books. But I had heard theories about the thing in Desperation being connected to the entity that is in it, that they're similar things.
Yeah.
And so when we are dehumanizing Flag at the end of this, where we're calling him a creature, that's where my mind is currently headed. And I do want to know more about his god, because the thing in Desperation was considered a god that had been worshipped way back in time. So I've got a lot of budding theories from this book. I really do enjoy that scene at the end where they are in Roland's chambers. I do feel the book ends a little abruptly, though, because it just kind of feels it's just over now.
Yeah.
With little to no explanations, but I had to sit through some really boring parts.
Yeah.
But all in all, it's a solid 4-star read out of 5.
Yeah. 4 stars not bad.
4 stars not bad. Nothing to be ashamed of there.
Do you think Flag is Carrie's dad? Or do you want to reserve...
Is Carrie's dad?
Yeah. Or do you want to hold back on that until we get to Carrie?
I don't know. I don't know that I have a strong feeling about him being Carrie's dad, but that is solid. I would like to read Carrie to know more, to kind of see if I can develop that out. I'm open to that theory.
Yeah, that's a theory that I heard somewhere.
No, that's a very interesting theory.
Definitely not my theory, but it's a theory. I don't remember where I heard it. It was probably Reddit, but it might also just be something I saw Googling information about Carrie. Credit goes to somebody else. It's not my theory.
We'll try and find it so we can properly cite.
When we actually get to Carrie, I'll make sure that I find it. But the general idea of it was just that Flag was the dad. And that's why her mom's so crazy. And the dad, like, agreed to be so fucking weird with the mom. And then that the idea kind of generally is that Flag is trying to make these, like, shiny kids.
So, like, Ego?
Huh?
Like Ego from
Guardians
Kind of, yeah.
Because he uses them to attack the beams of the tower. Okay. Like, because you remember the Dark Tower movie, right?
Yeah. Also a great movie.
Yeah, which, if you have problems with the Dark Tower movie, if you don't understand how, like, the alternate universes within the Dark Tower works, you haven't read the Dark Tower books. I don't know what to tell you. The movie with Idris Elba was fucking amazing, I thought, but I just like
Idris Elba is an amazing actor.
Yes, he was great, and you need to reread the books, I think, because it worked great, but it wasn't taking place in that in the book universe. It's the same, like, it's kind of that concept that he's trying to use these shining children to attack because that's his main storyline, is that he wants to take out the tower. And so he found Carrie's mom because he, like, just knew from because he can do little predictions and whatever, that it could possibly make a baby who would be strong. He bounced because he wasn't, like, because he was always going to bounce. And because he does shit to ruin his plans, or at least that was my understanding. And she went crazy because she also was just not strong enough. She didn't shine strong enough. Or at least she didn't until she, like, got to, Poltergeist time. Like, that era of her life, Minarch. Or as
coming of age.
Yeah, as Worm God Henry Zabrowski would put it, Minarch.
Then what are your final thoughts from the 1001 time reading this book?
It was better when I was younger, for sure.
Valid.
Having to actually read the parts that normally I would skip made it a weaker book, I think, but it wasn't, like, bad. Not by any means. It's still my favorite, but I think that will change now that I'm going to read other books. It's interesting. I have a lot of theories, I think, coming out of it as well. I do think this book is more about Flag than it is about anybody else.
I absolutely agree with that.
And I also think that the tower imagery in it, knowing how long it took him to get around to writing the Drawing of the Three, I don't remember if the Drawing of the Three had come out or was coming out at any point around this book coming out. I don't think so. And I know that it took him like 30 years-ish to get from the first, like, the Gunslinger to the Dark Tower, which is the 7th book of the Dark Tower series. And I still think there's so much of him working out what he was doing. Like, that story was inside of him. And even though this is a very different story, I think you could still see him trying to work that story out, or even just get it out of him in one swoop here and just realizing it was not going to happen.
Yeah.
And really starting to set the stage and knowing that he was writing with Peter Straub and doing things like The Talisman and stuff around this time.
And have you read The Talisman?
I've read The Talisman. I haven't read Black House.
Okay.
But I read The Talisman around the same time.
Okay.
In my teens, so it was when I was doing a lot of skipping. Like, I would scan a lot of things, like, boring. Oh, this is good. So
It is a thick book.
it is one that I think we will probably have to. It is related to all this stuff. It's gonna have to go on the
Yeah, that
list.
was my understanding, is that it's connected too. So,
But I don't know when. I don't know.
we'll figure it out. Because
It's
really, this is just an
very good.
excuse to read all of Stephen King's writing.
For real.
It's a great way to do this.
Yeah. No, if you haven't figured it out by now that this is pretty much a way to just read everything Stephen King ever wrote in the most chaotic way possible.
Yeah.
So,
having reread it again and reading it more critically, and the parts that you normally skip, do you feel like some of your opinions have changed or adapted or even grown, I guess? What is different?
I would say Peter is probably not my favorite character.
Who is now?
Frisky, for sure.
Frisky, okay.
I love Frisky. I like Pena, Judge Pena. I think I'm just old now, so I like some of the older people.
You do have to tend to pivot.
I also like Sasha. I kind of just feel for her. Just too young to be married to who she's married to, and trying to raise her son the best that she can, and just putting up with all this bullshit. And honestly, I kind of like Flag. I shouldn't, but I do.
And I think that's the real sign that it's Flag's book.
Yeah. Dennis. I like Dennis a lot.
Yeah. Who knew Dennis was going to be so freaking important?
Right? I think I identified a lot with Peter when I was a teenager because I was the oldest and felt put upon. And now that I'm older, I'm just like, wow, you're bland and boring, and I feel like I was meant to identify with you. I almost feel like you're meant to identify with him or with Naomi, and Ben is not in it enough to. At least I don't feel like he is.
I feel like Ben was a little bit. He was very bland of a character. He was mostly a catalyst.
Yeah.
You could have taken him out of most of the scenes he was in, and honestly, they wouldn't have needed to change much.
Yeah, Naomi could have just talked to Frisky, honestly, and just had Frisky do little things to elicit responses back from Naomi, and it would have been
it was
fine.
It was a bit unnecessary to have all of these things.
If you still wanted a romantic thing, at the beginning of the book, Peter is seeing somebody. That's why he leaves early enough for Flag to come in. It could have been Naomi, and I think that would have been more interesting. I understand why Ben is there earlier in the book, but I feel like Naomi is an interesting and kind of strong female character when those weren't getting written a lot. So cool, great. Let's be happy for that, I guess. We just didn't really need Ben. Or Ben could have done what Dennis was doing. Dennis could have stayed with Thomas more. He could have been the one who knew the ins and outs of the palace because he used to sneak in to see Peter. Instead of him, if we're not going to do anything with the rebellion plot, right?
Yes.
He didn't need to be out with the rebellion. If he knew how to sneak in and out of the palace, Dennis could have told Ben what he saw with Thomas and then gone back to work. And then Ben could have taken it to Pena. Pena could have been like, well, I know it's your best friend, but since Dennis wrote this letter, I recognize his handwriting, so I'll take it serious. You sneak back into the palace and go talk to Dennis or something. And then sent a letter to Naomi, who he knew had a past with Peter. That plot, the fact that Peter's seeing a woman, never comes up again. It's useless.
And the rebels never go anywhere either.
And so you can cut that whole thing, Pena, because there's also pirates that get mentioned a couple times at the beginning, and they never come up again. You could have had, at the end of this book, we could have had rebels and pirates, storming the Capitol as Peter, as a diversion, as Peter is trying to climb out of the Needle. That could have been so cool. They cut a deal with the rebellion and the pirates. to have them like come in and keep Flag busy so that way he can escape. Like, it would have been a longer book, but it would have been so much cooler. Having Naomi function that way would have been more stereotypical, but it would have made more sense, I feel like.
Yeah.
If we needed to have Naomi be in love with somebody. And it would have been more of a callback to the fact that Roland and Sasha, like, were the way that they were, and Roland was going to have trouble making heirs. That never, like, we get told that Peter isn't like that, but then it never comes up. It never matters. Like, but it could have mattered, and then Ben could have been like a pirate king or something. Like,
there were options.
This could have been such a cooler book. And I think maybe that's why I liked it when I was younger, because you can fill in so many of the blanks with your own brain. There's so much left for you to almost like fanfic, I think. I don't think I ever wrote fan fiction for Eyes of the Dragon, but you do in your head, like, so you can. And there was so much room for it because it's such a just cut off ending. Instead of, it feels very much almost like he did mean to write another book or something.
Yeah.
Because so much just got left on the table.
It did.
So
let's pull our card for this week.
Temperance. Today, the card that we have pulled is the Major Arcana card, Temperance.
So, Temperance shows an angelic figure, neither male nor female. The angel has 1 foot in the water and 1 on the ground, showing us that we need to stay active but remain grounded and practical. While one might have an extravagant imagination with many ideas, it is important to have a purpose and transfer our imagination into reality.
I think the cards are mad that we talked for this long.
I don't know. This feels pretty, like, interesting because I'm about to tell you where we're going next. And that is, our next book is actually going to be Misery. The response to Eyes of the Dragon. At least I feel that way. It could be wrong. I enjoy this lore, so if you know otherwise, please leave me alone.
Yeah, we don't want to.
No, we're having fun.
Technically, you could tell me you're gonna have to find me, and you're gonna have to hope that I actually read it and give a shit. I like to hear fun things. I'm not probably gonna listen if you try to be shitty.
So the plan is to read part 1, which is titled Annie. However, there are some trigger warnings that I want to give, and I'm also going to encourage you, because I'm not going to list every single one. I would encourage you to hop onto Storygraph. It's a great website where people are able to tag some of the warnings, and they are able to rank them by the severity. So if you're concerned that maybe there's more in there that I'm not about to include, hop online, look up Storygraph, look up Misery, and read some of the triggers people have put down.
Self-care is very, very important. Like, to be clear, sometimes there's going to be things you can't read with us. Sometimes there's going to be things that we can't read.
Exactly.
Because I don't know that I'll be coming along on the Misery journey because of these trigger warnings. Yeah. It's we take it real serious around here.
Absolutely. And the episodes, if they start talking about any of these things, we will also have a trigger warning at the start of them, so you can peace out if you want to peace out.
Yeah.
The big triggers are, it's very graphic. There's torture, body horror, mental illness, physical abuse, substance abuse, medical trauma, gaslighting, confinement, emotional abuse, suicidal thoughts. Those were the big ones. Like I said, there are others. Please look for yourself. I can't necessarily snag all of them because it's a very long list. Otherwise, that is the plan, is Misery.
And if you can't come down the rabbit hole with us on this one, don't worry about it. There's going to be so much fun still next time, and we'll we'll make sure to still do some fun shit.
Yeah,
It'll be good.
And we'll post on socials and put in episode descriptions when we are finishing some of the more triggering books, because as we go into his horror, I do think we're going to see this a lot more often.
Yeah.
The Eyes of the Dragon is a pretty low-key, more fantasy book, and even it has some triggers.
Yeah.
You know, death of a parent probably really should have gone on there.
We're learning.
Yeah, we're figuring it out, and I imagine that there will be lots of triggers for some of the further books, especially because we've all heard the story about one of the scenes in It. We're going to try our best and get all of them out there. But otherwise, I think that is it for us today.
Go now. There are other worlds than these.
You can find us on Instagram at Mini Constant Worlds.